And we go to this park and find out that there's a lot of stuff going on over there. And this lady comes over and says, "Oh, hello, what are you guys doing here?" And we say, "Oh, we were going to just hang out at the park. We had an event here." And she's like, "You have an event here?" They were throwing a big parade, event, extravaganza deal at the park there. And they were like, "So this is full. Like, we've reserved the park. You guys can't be here." And it was in that important moment I realized, people reserve parks.
Welcome to another episode of Young Entrepreneurs with the Green Roof Team. My name is Nelson Fernandez, your host, and today we're joined by one of our team managers, Tanner Clark. How are you doing today, Tanner?
I'm doing stellar.
Fantastic. Okay, so for everyone out there listening, we're going to be talking about a topic from a novel by Kevin Johnson called The Entrepreneur's Mind. The topic today is Think Big. So Tanner, I'm going to kick off this quote, and it was said by Mark Twain, and it's along the lines of, "To succeed in life, you need two things, ignorance and confidence." And I'd like to know your take on this quote.
Well, personally, I would say that ignorance and confidence has gotten me very far in life. So I must say that I agree. I have gotten into a lot of projects by holding the mentality of just saying yes, right? So a lot of people will, I guess, you get caught in analysis paralysis, or you have all these hesitations, these what ifs of like, what if I don't have time? Or what about this? What about that? What if I don't want to do it? What if it's hard? Things like that. And I think I realized somewhere along the line back in high school that 9 times out of 10, all that stuff doesn't amount to anything, So especially by the time I had gotten out of high school, my mentality was just like, just say yes, just see where your opportunities go, So is that being ignorant to failure? Yeah, it's not really paying attention to it much. It's good to mitigate those things, but it certainly is being confident. Confident in my abilities to, put forth my best work, to mean what I say, and just to put my all into the things that I do. So that confident mentality really carries you through for sure.
Okay, so you mentioned the word failure. In your own words, how do you define the word failure?
Really succinctly, I would say that failure is falling and not getting back up. So there are always setbacks in life and within any project you've got, But Nelson, I know something that you say, and something that really speaks to me, is that you say, as long as we learned from something, it wasn't truly a failure, right? Because that equips us to get up, dust ourselves off, and try again better this time. Because we learned, we can apply what we've learned and improve based upon that, So it's when we fail to learn, that's when we truly fail. Otherwise, there's no use crying over spilt milk, right? Mistakes that are made, they've already been made. They're done. There's sunk costs, but you can't let sunk costs affect your future behavior, right? So you always just need to have that open mindset with it.
Yeah, definitely. And the best experiences can come from learning from failure. Like, think about crying over spilled milk. If it actually happened, yeah, you can cry and, hey, you lost your milk, but what if that's how the first coaster was invented, or some kind of way of stopping cups from tipping over?
Yep. I've got a story about failure, actually, a real quick one. So back while I was at community college, at Lakeland over in Mattoon, Illinois, go Lakers. I was part of a group where really I was starting a group, and it was an idea I had with some other students and some outside help that we had received. So we were starting this group, and we were trying to, recruit people, gain interest. So one of the things that we did at the start of the year is that we decided to put together a social. So we put together this social event. We got Gatorade, snacks, cornhole, all this good stuff. We were going to go out to a park in Mattoon and just have a good, fun evening, socializing, getting to know people, starting to build our connections to form a team, really. So, I send out all this information. I get the supplies together, like I mentioned. The day comes, drive things over there, and we go to this park and find out that there's a lot of stuff going on over there. And this lady comes over and says, "Oh, hello, what are you guys doing here?" And we say, "Oh, we were going to just hang out at the park. We had an event here." And she's like, "You have an event here?" We have, like, I forget what it was, probably Habitat for Humanity or the Humane Society, something like that. They were throwing a big parade event extravaganza deal at the park there. And they were like, "So this is full. Like, we've reserved the park. You guys can't be here." And it was in that important moment I realized, people reserve parks, because I'm from a really small town, and I had no clue that people reserved public spaces like that. I thought you just showed up, So had to call, text all these people that we invited and said, "Hey, we're not going here. We're going to this other place in Mattoon." So, had to scramble there. Thankfully, I had, a good team that helped me put that together. So everybody else went over to the other park to set up. I stayed there to catch people who were driving there, as I was sending out these messages to send them over there. And thankfully, it ended up working okay. But that was a big, that was a big fail on my part. Could have saved a lot of trouble for myself and my team if I would have had the foresight to plan that and to ask more questions, But live and learn. I learned from it, so not a total failure.
Yeah, definitely, it's a great learning experience and makes me think about the matrix of how knowledgeable you're about something against how conscious. And now you know that, hey, maybe asking more questions and try and kind of like fishbone diagram and just dive deeper and try and see if there's any obstacles that you might face.
For sure. That's something I do come back to time and again. Even currently with my job, my day job, that is, and this job, just finding out a bunch of things that I just don't know. And, I look back on things very, very frequently and said, "Oh man, I wish I would have done this differently." So I definitely don't count that as a failure. I count that as a huge success, because if I can learn from that and apply that, it's an indication that I actually am learning. If I was like succeeding at everything that I did, I wouldn't be pushing myself. I wouldn't be growing, right? You have to require some of those stresses and some of those little upsets in order to develop, whether it's in your career, whether it's in a business, or whether it's in life.
Okay. So coming off this idea of learning from mistakes and their ergo not calling it failure, do you feel that if you don't learn the lesson immediately, it is a failure? or if you learn or it can be considered failure, but you learn the lesson down the road. Do you feel the time in between learning the lesson and the event happening determines if it's a failure?
This kind of seems a little philosophical for me, but I think it kind of depends. I think it's important to always have a mindset of learning. Try and learn something new every day, whether it's little or small, because if you maintain that, learning muscle up in your brain somewhere, I think that you're going to keep yourself primed to improving upon previous mistakes. So you get in the habit. You build that habit. Now, sometimes you get in over your head a lot, and you don't even know like what mistakes you made. You don't know what went wrong. You just knew that it went wrong, right? So I think it's super important at those times to give yourself time to reflect and digest and sit with those failures. That's really uncomfortable for a lot of people. I think it has something to do with our culture, really, of trying to avoid failure and always trying to seem like you're successful. Like look at social media, look at Instagram. People don't post like pictures of like burnt bread or like failed baking recipes, right? They post pictures of like these perfect things, right? So we put up this veneer like of perfection when that's really not accurate of someone's life, and it doesn't teach people how to sit with that failure and really learn from it, really meditate on it and digest it. So setting forth that time is crucial, but overall, a large thing that I like to bear in mind as well is that failing is not an indication of like who you are as a person, right? So just because you fail does not mean that you are a failure. So if say something doesn't go as planned and you don't learn from it until years down the line, that's still a win, So like maybe you'll look back and see years and years upon years of like decisions that could have been made differently or different actions. But I guess in short, life is just too brief to be caught up in the regret of all that. So, things come and go and we aren't perfect, and that's okay. That's what makes life interesting.
And Tanner, that actually brings up something that I've been thinking about recently. So every day I have a question of the day, and it goes along with the passage I read as well. I'll be honest, I do not remember the passage, but the question of the day a few days ago was, if you had the chance to change something in your past, what would it be? And there's, of course, two different ways on answering the question, but I'm not going to share the two ways until you do. So, Tanner, if you had the chance to change something, you don't have to name something specific, but would you be willing to change something in your past to help change for the future?
Oh, okay. Okay. So would I be willing to change something in the past? Like, I guess anything, and it doesn't need to be the specific thing. I'm very torn on that, honestly, because you always want to go like, we want to be perfect. You always want to look back at life and say, oh, I should have done this, because we assume that is going to lead to like this ideal, right? That that we want. We want to be successful, we want to have it all, we want to be rich, and all that good stuff. But we really don't know how the world works, right? We don't have all that figured out. So every action has intended consequences and unintended consequences. There's always side effects. So if you're going to change something, what other things are going to change with that? Especially regarding failures. Failure invites reflection, and that invites growth, right? So if we choose to not fail, we don't invite growth into our lives, right? So yeah, I mean, there's still the part of me, maybe the simpler part of me that wants to go back and change things, but there's also the part of me that is very thankful for the process, really, of failing, getting back up, and trying again. And I'm really thankful to be able to live my life in that way, where I'm not focused solely on the goal. I'm focused on the journey as well. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's the same perspective I took. Like thinking back to an example in the past year, myself and a few others, we worked really hard and for over a year proved the feasibility of getting a solar system installed on SIU's campus. But when the time came where hard deadline to make a decision came into play, the one factor we didn't have was the finance and the funding to do so. So then we actually decide, okay, what's the next move now? Are we going to kill this project, or are we going to pivot and push harder to find a solution? And we came to the decision of killing off the project. From the grants that we've written, none have come through, and the goal just feels quite out of reach. And I'll be honest, I was laying on a mattress for about 2 straight days, not wanting to do anything else, because it just felt like an anchor fell and I couldn't lift it up. But instead, what happened was taking a step back, reflecting, and thinking, okay, we might not have what we want, but we do have things in front of us we can use. And then that's how the birth of using solar modules for the wind turbine came into play. We had the funding to get solar and rackings and ballast, and we used that to help improve a different project. So essentially taking a pivot. So it's a great failure. Actually, I wouldn't consider it a failure, just a lesson on how to pivot a project.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's just moments like that are when you find out what people are made of, right? I hate being in those positions, because they're stressful and they make you feel like crud. But when you're with a team that you're helping to guide through that, and they're helping to guide and support you, that's when you find the true character of people. That's when you find out what people are made of.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing, Tanner. So think about big picture once again. If you come across a failure and need to either pivot or come to a decision, is there usually a set of questions you'll ask yourself or a methodology on reflecting to find a clearer path moving forward?
I mean, there is failure mode effects analysis. I don't say that I would really do that, especially not in a formal sense most times. But yeah, when there's a risk of failure, I guess you always need to ask broadly, what are the consequences of failing, right? And being honest with yourself. I think people are very risk averse and they're afraid to fail. But like, if the stakes aren't big, what's the harm? So hopefully you get to learn something out of it, like we've been talking about. So my general heuristic, you might say. Like, my rule of thumb is just to think, what happens if I do fail? Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? And usually I think to myself, I can live with that. I can accept that risk. And then I go and try and I see what happens.
Awesome sauce. Okay. So going back to the quote we began off talking about ignorance and confidence, there is a conclusion that a lot of people make about how ignorance in one area can lead to success in another. And I feel like that's something that we've been conversing about. So, Tanner, if you had a big idea, an amazing idea that can change the world, but you lack the technical skills, what do you think you would do in that situation?
I could see two choices. One is I either need to learn the skills myself, or I need to recruit the help of somebody who does have the technical knowledge, right? So I think both of those require a strong sense of motivation, a strong vision, really. And I think that having a big idea that you're excited about and that you want to share with other people, I think that's one of the greatest ways to share a vision with yourself and with others, because you're going to motivate yourself if you believe in your idea. And then also you can inspire others and find a common vision with them. So I would say, I love to learn. So I would probably lean towards learning something myself, learning the technical knowledge. But you also need to be realistic with yourself and realize when something's out of your scope and when do you need to recruit and you utilize other people. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Delegation and the art of delegation, one of the most useful skills anyone out there should be able to learn and want to learn. Just helps ideas grow at paces that honestly are not imaginable at some points. Before we come towards the end of this episode, I did have another, not too sure if it's a quote, but a statement, and I'd like your take on it. And it goes along the lines of, wealthy individuals have indeed broken the mold and challenged the assumption that you have to be highly familiar with the industry in which you plan to compete in. So do you have any thoughts on this statement?
Yeah. I would say mainly from that, we were just talking about your technical know-how. I would say never feel intimidated to swing out of your league, once again, you go back to that fear of inferiority, that fear of failure. And it's very easy to tell yourself, I'm not good enough or I don't know enough. But in many ways, that can be an asset sometimes because you have a fresh set of eyes and you hopefully have the mindset of somebody who wants to learn and wants to innovate within a space or within an industry. So I would encourage anyone who is having trepidations, who's having doubts, to say, okay, I'm not experienced in a conventional sense, but how can I use that as an asset? How can I use that to my advantage? Whether that's to make money, have the best business in the world, or just make an impact in your communities in the way that you best see fit. I was very fortunate to have good mentors in my community that helped me learn how to serve. And not everyone is fortunate to have that around them. But if you persevere, you can forge your own path. You can find your own ideas. So I would encourage everyone to just have a fresh set of eyes when you look around you.
Awesome sauce. Couldn't have asked for a better ending to today's episode, Tanner. Thank you again for coming onto the show today.
My pleasure.
Cool. And for anyone out here listening to us, if you want to learn more about the Green Roof team, please come visit us at our website, on social media. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate it, review it, watch another episode. And remember, folks, stay sustainable.